we are at a moment in time in business history for India where startups are finding validation on public markets, which has never happened before, so much so that I think they are now seen as more valuable by public market investors than even the private investors who've backed Indian startups for a very long time. So I think this is a great time to be having this conversation. And to begin, I thought we should sort of lay out the, sort of the very interesting panelists that we have. So we have Keshav here, who is an entrepreneur who's working on the digital public infrastructure that India has built, which is really one of the most innovative technologies that have come out in the country. Maria, who I think, by her own words, is building a LinkedIn for technology jobs. Is that how you would describe it? And she's in India to see what she can do more for tech workers. And Nikhil, you'll know, he's, I think, sort of really dazzled all of us in India with the possibility of getting from point A to point B in quick time, which is a really big ask for those of us in India. So I thought we could begin by describing, getting our panelists to talk about how India's done very well with building digital infrastructure, but has, as we all know, has struggled with building physical infrastructure. So what can startups actually do to change this? So maybe we could just begin really with Nikhil trying to tell us, is there a way out, So particularly because I come from a city where the contrast is more acute. Bangalore is the home for India's DPI, but is one of the cities where the commute is the slowest. So can startup innovation change physical infrastructure for India?
I certainly think so. I mean, look, India has an incredible history, if you look empirically, of leapfrogging into new technologies. If you think about the telecom infrastructure here in India, for example, I grew up in the United States, born and raised, and I grew up with, dial-up internet, and then fiber internet, and then satellite internet, and then ultimately now I use, of course, my phone for most of my telephony needs. Here in India, children grew up with, as soon as they were able to use the internet, they used it on their phones. They didn't have dial-up, they didn't have fiber, they didn't have DSL, they didn't go through any of these steps because India, perhaps it wasn't first, but it was actually the first to go build 5G and LTE at the scale at which we have now. And now nearly everybody is able to use their mobile phone and use LTE speeds that are actually faster than a lot of America. I think we'll do the same here with transportation. And that's why we're so excited to launch electric air taxis here, because the roads, given how congested they are, India has an opportunity to leapfrog directly into air taxis. And I think similarly, we'll do the same with a lot of the physical infrastructure here.
Oh, that's interesting. And I think a lot of us out here will say, the quicker you do it, the better it will be for the rest of us. Maria, I wanted to ask you, you are looking at sort of building your business in India at a time when technology jobs are really in a sense of flux, right? We've seen more job losses than new job creation in the tech sector. What do you see as, where do you think this, where is it going in terms of tech jobs?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've been effectively in a tech recession for the last 2 years, though many don't like to say that. That is what's been happening. We began seeing a decline in Q2 of 2022. However, for the past 5 years, I have known and seen and predicted that India is going to be the future for tech innovation. And came out pretty strong to our board of directors that we needed to spend the next 2 years during the downturn investing in product and R&D and launching globally, specific for the India market, which we have done now. So we're officially in the India market. And about 20% of our jobs are in India for technology companies, mostly right now, US-based companies. And we are seeing more US-based companies hiring abroad and accelerating job creation abroad. And I do think this will come back. I do think we've seen a decline. There's a significant decline in traditional software engineering jobs. However, with AI, there will be new job creation, right? There's a history from the Industrial Revolution to the digital and internet revolution. When there is a technology revolution, it spurs new job creation in some way, shape, or form. And we're already starting to see it pan out with AI. And so you'll start to see different roles. You'll start to see ethics and systems maintenance roles. In the US, we're about to, California's probably going to pass a bill about AI and testing and systems. And so I think you're going to see a lot more job creation as the markets start to accelerate and pick up again. You'll just start to see different jobs. And then you're going to have to see a lot of reskilling, which I think I read an Economic Times article recently that said 86% of tech companies in India are reskilling their workforce. And that's going to become super critical as well.
I think, Professor Rubin, you touched upon this. So will there be more pain before there's gain? I think before we go on to Keshav, maybe that's something that we should, with regard to AI and the transformation that it will bring about in the tech labor market, so to speak. So Keshav, yours is a very interesting example of, sort of coming from a business family and then moving into innovation in the tech sector, riding on the DPI highway, from what I understand. You want to tell us a little bit more about how, the opportunity for creating innovation and change in startups drew you from a family background in business to the tech sector?
Thanks, Archana. I think I have a very interesting vantage point because my family business built infrastructure. GVK built two of the best airports in the world. And after that, I obviously love technology. So I'm building on top of the digital public infrastructure, the DPI. And Prime Minister Modi, the entire India Stack team, all based in one neighborhood in Bangalore, have possibly built the most innovative products in the world. Aadhaar has 1.4 billion people on it. You have UPI, now we're doing 15 billion monthly transactions. Account aggregator crossed 100 million transaction data consents. UHI is going to take off. You have every single part of the stack is just blowing up. So we at Equal have just started, 2 years old, and we've crossed 40 million users. Mumbai Airport, when I used to be part of the team running it, we had 60 million users every year. So the digital stack is just going to blow up. The other day, the CEO of NPCI at GFF 2 days ago said, in the next 4 years or 5 years, the number of UPI transactions is going to go to 100 billion monthly. Just imagine. It is the most advanced financial system stack in the world, even better than China's. So I'm super bullish about the DPI, all aspects of the DPI, and couldn't be more excited to build on top of it. And interestingly enough, a lot of value is getting built on top of the DPI. So what they've done really well is they've built the stack and let private companies innovate on top of it. So today, about $100 billion worth of value in startups have been built on top of the DPI, which in the early days was unknown because, the government is doing a lot of the work. So that's super exciting, and I think that's going to really create a wave of new age innovation. And just to add on to that, I think old school, like infrastructure, physical infrastructure will improve, right? We have the best airports in the world. We will have the best roads in the world. We will have all aspects of it because now we are one of the superpowers. So I'm super excited, and I couldn't be more excited than before.
I just want to, that's a very ringing validation for India's potential. But on that note, Maria, I just wanted to ask you, just going back to the point you were making with regard to the impact that AI will have on tech jobs, do you think it will be the specialists who will gain, or will it be the generalists? Which way will it go?
I probably don't think about it as specialists and generalists. I'd say it's more your highly skilled tech workers, and then it's going to be human types of roles that support AI, right? And so we're going to have to go back down to the education system and change what majors look like in universities and how we're educating the future workforce to support AI. I think it's going to have to start there, all through up to reskilling. But I do think, this year alone, I think it's projected that AI is going to be about 184 billion, projected to get to about 800 by 2030. So it's significant. And with it will come significant opportunity for new jobs. I think right now we're seeing a lot of it in data scientists, in more specialized roles. But, in the US, there's been a lot of noise around AI taking over everyone's jobs. There will be mundane task type work that goes away, but there will be way more highly skilled roles available. And for a market like India that produces such a high volume of highly skilled workers, you're going to see a lot of opportunity.
That's reassuring. Nikhil, I wanted to ask you with regard to regulation, which I think will be a huge aspect in the area that you're working in. The oft understood premise is that technology travels ahead and regulation follows behind, right? Except, of course, in the DPI that Keshav has been talking about, where I think it's stayed in lockstep, and which is why we've seen this huge upsurge in fintech innovation that's come, because the regulation has been in step with the technology. How is it in your space, and what are the, how do you think, how much of a challenge is dealing with regulation for startups, for innovators, and, of course, in your area particularly?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, look, in aviation, there is necessarily a lot of regulation. But that's not a bad thing, because aviation has always been, and I suspect always will be, the safest and most low-cost per mile way to travel in the world. And in order to be that safe, you have to have that regulation to make sure it continues to be safe. And so there's nothing wrong with regulation. I think what's important is the point you made, is that regulation should stay in lockstep with the technology. When it comes to advanced aerial mobility, I think that's very much been the case all over the world. So in the US, where we're based, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, is leading the charge. And what that's done is it's brought in regulators from all over the world. In the UAE, we're working with the GCAA, the General Civil Aviation Authority. And then, of course, here in India, we're working very, very closely with the DGCA. And it really helps because a lot of the folks there came from industry, right? The DG, Mr. Vikram Devdutt, he came from Air India, so he understands what it's like to operate a safe airline. Many of the folks there across the board came from industry and have been deeply engaged with us in conversation, learning about the technology. Of course, our partners Interglobe have been incredibly helpful because they have such a long history there of operating so many airplanes safely. And so for us, what we'll do is we'll continue to work here with the regulators here in India. We'll make sure that we launch as quickly as possible, but also safely as possible. And what that means is establishing our team here, our presence here, being very open and collaborative with all of the test flights that we're doing in the US and globally. And then when we come here, we'll come here at the same time as we will in the US because of all that groundwork that we've laid.
Just, that's a really, I think, a very pertinent point that a lot of founders kind of like struggle with, right? Because a lot of the startup activity in India has been about aggregating disaggregated markets in recent years. So they've come up against a lot of regulatory hurdles, which is why I thought, we should get Keshav to tell us how the Fintech Revolution has taken off, because, as we said, it's worked in lockstep. So what are the advantages? So do you see that as an advantage that a startup ecosystem must necessarily have?
I'll take a step back, Archana. See, if you think about the Indian tech ecosystem, right? Today, it's the third largest globally in terms of number of companies. About 100,000 companies are born every year, and has the top 125 unicorns have created a value of about 400 billion. Now, 400 billion, the listed company stocks in India is about 3.6 trillion. So about 14 to 15% of the market now is in early stage or tech companies. True. Everybody's taking notice. Regulators are progressive. Prime Minister was there in GFF the other day. He spoke about AI. I believe he's doing that here too. Everybody's looking forward to innovation in tech, and regulators are fabulous because they understand the nuance, but they have to govern. So I think it's the right thing they're doing. The Reserve Bank is fabulous. I think without that, we have the strongest Reserve Bank in the world. There's no doubt about that. You saw during COVID, they were able to control the currency using both the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. So I think the regulators have done an amazing job. They've moved with the times. India Stack has enabled everyone to do that. Yeah, that's my view. I think they've done a really, really good job.
And what's in terms of, being an overseas entrepreneur trying to build a business here, Maria, how do you see this in terms of, one, the talent, and also the ease of doing business, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way I could say it is 50% of our enterprise buyers are hiring in India today. So I don't think there's an issue doing business in India, and that's why we're here. And when you have about 20% of our mid-market customers, these are customers from, say, 100 to 1,000 employees, this means anyone can do business here, right? And so, yes, of course, to Nikhil's point, in highly regulated industries where safety is a concern, healthcare, right? things that put lives at risk, you're going to see increased regulation, but you're going to see that globally. That's not India specific. And so there's nothing that tells me that India is any more difficult to do business in as a technology company.
So money has been at the heart of driving startup, activity. And we've seen waves of venture money come into India over the last 10, 15 years. But there's always been this argument that, it's predicated on particular kinds of businesses and not really backing innovation. So, this is a question that I would want all three of you to address. How much of, sort of venture money or the money available to founders should be to go towards testing new ideas and not just sort of building or growing existing businesses? How important is money for innovation, really?
I think it depends on the industry, right? If you are, so I used to help lead the Uber India business, and we started our India office in Bangalore. And it was just incredible to me how efficient the talent was. So, you could hire what we call the 10X engineer here in Bangalore, and they could do, for a fraction of the price of one engineer, they were more efficient than 10 engineers sitting in Silicon Valley for 2 or 3X the pay. And I think that efficiency gap is only starting to get larger with AI. And so I would say if you're starting a software company, if you're building a mobile app, it's actually much easier to do that today. And I've actually encouraged a lot of those founders to not go raise venture capital, to say, hey, save up a little bit of your own money, go bootstrap it with you and a couple of friends, and go try to build as much of it as you can using AI yourself, and only then go raise money once you've found product market fit. Now, I think for some industries like mine, like aviation, there's no way around it. You need, not just a lot of money, you need over $1 billion of capital. And the fortunate piece there is I think venture capitalists and investors, particularly in the West, are starting to increasingly see the value of India as a market. I spent the last month working with investors in New York and California and London. We just raised a new round for the company. We've raised about $1.5 billion US publicly to date. And what I can tell you is over the last year, investors were so excited about the Indian opportunity because they look at India and the congestion here. You look at 7% of an average Indian's time is spent stuck in traffic. That's compared to about 4% globally. They see the opportunity and they say, wow, if you guys, can go launch there, that alone is a multi-billion dollar business, tens of billions of dollars of business. And so you're starting to see that capital, particularly in the West, get more excited about the Indian market than I think they have been previously. And so I think for companies that are starting here, that are attacking a large portion of that Indian market, I think they'll find it easier than ever to raise capital.
So I think we're running out of time. So I'll just take the same question again to you, Maria. What are the two top things that you would see for a vibrant startup ecosystem? And then Keshav, your turn.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's really percolating top of mind for me for the India market is you follow the public markets, right? Venture capitalists will always follow the public markets. And so as you see the market caps increase for technology and fintech and renewable energy types of businesses here in India, you're going to start to see increased investment, right? In the US, Tesla's market cap growing has only created more investor interest in that electric vehicle market. And so you're going to start to see that in India. And so those are the industries that I think are going to get a lot of attention, a lot of investor interest. You're also going to see a lot of foreign direct investment into the India market as a result of the market caps growing here. So it's going to start to snowball in a material way. And I think that's what excites us.
So Keshav, how will it snowball? What are the two factors that you think?
Snowball effect, maybe it's... Hello? Yeah. In terms of a snowball effect, the reality is investors don't know where to invest other than India. And they have to invest in India because every LP is saying invest in India. And the late stage capital is extremely cyclical in India because they're all US global-based funds who listen to their LPs, who basically listen to the inflation rate. So unfortunately, we are all dependent on that for a long duration. But the good thing is the Indian wealth, domestic wealth has increased significantly. You can see that in mutual fund wealth. You can see that in early stage tech. You can see that in all aspects of consumerism. So what's going to happen is what's happened in China. domestic capital is going to become very strong, and that's going to drive innovation and maybe reduce the reliance of global capital, although global capital is extremely important later stage in the round. So I'm extremely bullish that domestic capital is going to be available more than ever before. And a lot of tech companies are going to start seeing new age, deep tech is getting funded, space tech is getting funded, biotech is getting funded like never before. Research is never funded in India. That's the reality. Now a lot of capital is coming there. So there will be innovation in the next growth. And I think in terms of AI as well, most of the guys in the West are Indian. Most of the guys in SF are Indian. So there is a lot of, there's a lot of Indian talent who's there, who's coming back, and they're building here. And that's the excitement. You will see in the next maybe 5-10 years that India is going to be the hub for all innovation. As we touch a $10 trillion economy, that's going to be the place to be. So I studied in the US, and I came back here because I always thought the opportunities were in India.
So domestic money, domestic talent, and market. On that rousing note, thank you very much.